But Lindsey Williams, recapping your inside intel on the oil spill, and then let's go forward.
Alex, thank you for allowing me the privilege of being here today with you in order to be able to give you an update. Alex, I've got to say first, before we even begin, I had the most heart-rending radio talk show on yesterday I've ever had in my life. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. I have never been moved this much. A radio talk show host in Orlando, Florida, called me, and he said, Chaplain Williams, you have got to be on my show immediately. I told him, I said, I can't. I'm too tired. I've been doing day and night with this. He said, you've got to. You don't have any choice. He had me on he asked me for an hour. He said, at least give me an hour. Now, this is Orlando, Florida. I said, why do you want me on? He said, Chaplain, I came down with a respiratory problem myself 1 week ago. He said, for the past 3 days, I have wanted to throw up all the time. He said, I felt so nauseated. He said, members of my family have problems. He said, people in Florida are upset. He said, please go on my show. We went on. The first hour, I gave my material. The second hour, Alex, I have never had this. I've been doing radio shows for 35 years. Every phone line in his studio lit up and stayed lit up for the entire second hour. He said, you can't go. You've got to stay with us. Alex, I've never heard such testimonies. These people are getting sick down there. I mean, there are problems in Florida that'll be, I heard this with my own voice. This was yesterday, right now. And finally,
well, a couple days after you were on,
we have never had this many phone calls on any radio show I've ever done in all of my years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, a few. Sure.
Heart-rending. He said, Chaplain, there are only 2 highways out of Florida, 2 interstates. And he said, there are 2 canals that cross both of those interstate highways. He said they could block us in here. People were scared. Now, these canals run east and west, and the 2 interstate highways run north and south. He said, we are stuck here. He said they could block the highway at those 2 canals that run east and west, and he said nobody could move in and out of Florida unless they told us we could. Alex, I just had to mention this because people all over America, they don't realize how desperate it is in Florida and how...
All right, Lindsey, we've got to break.
Alex,
we're going to have to break right here. We're going to come back with Lindsey Williams on the other side. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Stay with us. I'm going to go to Lindsey Williams now to recap what his major oil company executive, Intel, who we know the source, this is real intel, it's been very accurate predictions in the past, what he told him about the oil spill 2 weeks ago and the new developments since then. Lindsey Williams, go ahead, sir.
The Gulf of Mexico oil disaster, the real story of what happened out there. What comes out of the Gulf of Mexico oil gusher with the oil, this is causing the death of humans and unborn babies. Yes, I'm concerned about the ecology. I sure am. But I am more concerned about what it's doing to human beings. Now, let me give very brief background. In 1970, the Russians drilled the first, what is known as super deep oil well. They drilled it down to 40,230 feet. It was called Kola SG-3. Since then, because of what they found, Russian oil major Kukos has drilled 310 successful deep wells and put them in production. And last year, Russia overtook Saudi Arabia as the world's biggest single oil producer and is now set to be the producer for the next century. What did they find when they got to 40,230 feet? They did not find fossil fuel. There are no rotted trees and plants and animals down that deep. They found abiotic oil. Please write this down. ABIOTIC oil. This is oil that has been formed by a chemical process somewhere in the heart of the earth. And as a result of this, Russia has become the oil producer they are. Now, this oil is seeping up into shallow oil wells, such as Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Mexico, many in America. Peak oil's a total misnomer. Now, Russia had sense enough, and I don't hesitate using these words. Russia had sense enough to drill their Kola SG-3 well down to 40,000 feet on the land, not in the Gulf of Mexico. At this point, I contacted the Mr. X of my book, Energy Non-Crisis, and found out the real story, what has happened. The difference was BP has attempted to do in the Gulf of Mexico in water, ocean water, what Russia did on the land. BP was so stupid as to attempt to drill a super deep well. First time it's ever been done besides anybody but Russia. And they attempted to drill a super deep well off of a floating platform that was not anchored to the bottom of the ocean, and it was controlled, its position, by very sophisticated GPS equipment. Now, the water at that point, where they attempted to drill, is 5,000 feet deep. That's approximately 1 mile. 5,280 feet, 1 mile. They drilled 5,000 feet. It was 5,000 feet to the bottom of the ocean. And they drilled from that point between 25 and 30,000 feet deep into the ocean. Now think of it for a moment. You're flying on that jet aircraft, commercial airliner, cross country. You look out the window when the pilot says, "We have reached cruising altitude." And what do you see? You can hardly see the ground. Do you realize that's 30,000 feet? And that's exactly where they had drilled approximately the depth of what you see from that jet aircraft as you're traveling on a commercial airliner. It's just preposterous. Now, I've got to stop here long enough, Alex, to say the government of the United States of America issued the permits to BP to drill that well, and I have not made this statement on any program before, I don't think. But I've come to this conclusion. The government of the United States of America is just as much to blame for this Gulf of Mexico oil disaster as BP. They issued the permits. They gave them the permission to do it. They knew where they were going. They knew how deep they were going. They knew that they could not possibly know what they were going to hit down there. And when BP got down 25 to 30,000 feet, let me give you the size of the pipe. You need to know these details as we go along. This pipe that they were putting into the ocean floor is 20 inches in diameter. It is 2 inches thick of solid, hardened steel. In a moment, I'll tell you what's happening to that pipe. But right now, let me go back to where we were. They hit a strata. They hit something so catastrophic, so unexpected. This is positively is an accident, folks. Don't for 1 minute's time say that they did this intentionally. They did not. Every one of my oil sources, including the individual whom I've been able to contact with Halliburton, every one of them said this happened by accident. They did not know what they were hitting. This is not a conspiracy. This positively is something that they didn't know they were going to hit. They hit a strata of oil. Now, notice that word strata. You're going to hear more of it, even in the news as they come out with this. They hit a strata of oil that was such high pressure that it burst every safety valve they had. The pressure behind that oil is so high that it destroyed the maximum effort of human science to contain it. And let's compare it, for instance.
Well, Lindsey, let's stop there. We've got to go to break. We're going to come right back to you to continue. So you're basically recapped what you covered a week ago with us, a week and a half ago. We're going to continue now with the new developments with Lindsey Williams and then your phone calls. This just breaking at prisonplanet.com. It's also up on Infowars.com. Paul Joseph Watson, BP aware of cracks in oil well 2 months before explosion. BP was aware of cracks appearing in the well as far back as February, right around the time Goldman Sachs BP chairman dumped their stock.